Welcome back, and this time it's Focus Africa inside of Breakfast Extra. Welcome to Focus Africa, where we bring you the most significant stories shaping the continent, not just Nigeria. Today we turn our focus to Ghana, a country often praised as a beacon of political stability in West Africa. Just months ahead of the December 7 elections, Ghana's Supreme Court has stepped in to reverse a decision by the Parliamentary Speaker to declare 4 seats vacant, effectively shutting down Parliament. This move, seen by many as politically charged, has highlighted growing tensions between President Nana Akufo-Addo's new Patriotic party, that's the NPP, and the opposition National Democratic Congress, which recently gained a slim majority after several defections. And also, we're going to sort of unpack the implications of this Supreme Court ruling, as well as talk about the upcoming elections and youth participating in the upcoming elections and what it could mean for Ghana's political landscape. We're joined by our guest today, Professor G. Eche Sikanku, University of Media, Arts and Communication, UNIMEC, political, and he's also a political communication analyst, and he joins us live on the program. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor. We appreciate you for doing this with us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
So much is happening with Ghana, and it seems all eyes now on Ghana, one of the most important countries in the western part of the continent, Africa. The elections are just, a month away. December 7th is just around the corner, and we've seen a lot of activism with the youth regarding the mines as well as gold mining, illegal mining, and all of that in between. I'd like for you to talk about the stage, just set the stage for us and youth participation and how it could play a key role in deciding the executive for Ghana for the next 4 years.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, it is a very significant election coming up. But of course, with every election, we've seen a growth in the democratic landscape in the country. One of the constituents who have been really deeply involved in the run-up to the election is the youth. There's been a lot of activism on this side, especially on the side of the Fix the Country campaign and other groups who have come together to demonstrate every now and again on issues that they care about. So, for instance, we have Democracy Hub being an umbrella body, which is made up of young activists, young people who have mobilized people all across the country to demonstrate against issues that they care about, issues in governance, issues about the economic conditions of the country, job creation, and many other topical issues in the nation. And so the youth have definitely made their voice heard in this election. The last demonstration that the Democracy Hub had is something that really garnered national attention. Some of the leaders were arrested, and there was a lot of conversation about it across the country. And so it is definitely a constituency that has to be looked at. We do know that the youth constitutes a huge percentage of the demography in the country. And so what it means is that the political parties do have to pay attention to that in terms of elections. So there are other concerns, education, cost of living, and all of that. And many young people will be looking at these things to make their voices heard during the election.
Now, Mr. Anku, I want us to dissect the youth participation here in Ghana. You made a comment. You said they have made their voices heard. And when it comes to the youth, you would always note that they do this by using the apparatus of social media. They're very heavily reliant on social media, whether in Ghana or here in Nigeria, it's the same. We also saw the same thing happen in Kenya as well, where this was a big apparatus for them. However, let's compare this to what we saw. A very successful election in Botswana, a 6-decade-long administration was taken over only just last week, and there was very little heard on social media. However, it was heavily youth-driven. So for Ghana now, I come back and ask, is this just another noise factor that we're hearing from the youth or from the people? Will this go on to actual impact on governance?
Thanks very much for your question. I think it's a good and important question. The comparisons that you made are very legitimate and very, very relevant. Yes, in Kenya, you're right. In Kenya, We do saw the youth being the groundswell for the political activism and for a lot of the changes that happened. President Ruto had to withdraw that finance bill. He quickly had to sack his entire his cabinet and then reconstitute the administration, bringing in some members of the opposition and making it a larger, broad-based government. And also, we also did see the opportunity for the youth and other demographic groups being involved in governance. So that was important. Then we look at Botswana, which is another example that you've cited. And there are other examples in other places where whenever there was change, it was the youth who took charge and drove that change. And so it's an important issue to ponder or to consider in Ghana. What is the situation? I do think that the youth have really played a very pivotal role in the democratic landscape in Ghana historically, looking at the National Union of Ghana Students, looking at the Student Representative Councils, the SRCs. These are the bodies which have led the charge, which have led national demonstrations when it came to elections or when it came to even various governance issues. And so it has forced the government to respond. As I said, the youth population in Ghana constitutes over 40% of the national population. And so it is a constituency that cannot be ignored. Under the current democratic dispensation, or as far as the run-up to this elections are concerned, we've seen the youth really participate and make their voices heard, not just on social media, but practically. One of the major things that we've seen as far as Ghana is concerned is the upsurge of digital social activism. The youth have employed the power of technology, Twitter and social media, to make sure that they make their voices heard. And most of the things that they've talked about have trended on Twitter, on X, have trended on Facebook, and they've used WhatsApp very effectively to mobilize themselves. So much so that the government had to withdraw certain things. For instance, we had the drop that chamber when Parliament wanted to build a new chamber. It was the activism of the youth. In fact, some marched to the premises of Parliament and made their voices heard, and government had to drop it. And so I don't think that it's cosmetic. I think the government has paid attention. In fact, about 3 or 4 demonstrations over the past couple of years have really revolved around what the youth has done. And so I do think the government has felt the pinch. I think that they do recognize that this is an important constituency that they have to pay attention to. Right. But the question is, how does that translate into the elections? I think the political parties are still centered around ethnic, political, ideological cleavages. And so that may not be the only determining factor for the election. There are other things that really dilute the decisions that the youth make in terms of where to vote or where to go to.
I mean, I'm really glad we're having this conversation in terms of social media and the vital roles it plays in youth participation. Now, I'm also going to cite examples like Mazino has done, right? In the case of Kenya and Botswana, what we saw, and also I would also put Senegal into this as well, because Senegal also saw a sweep of youth activism and participation in the election, wanting to see an active change and persons who represent their interests, right? But what we also saw was a party or a power or an executive that listened to the people and decided to act for the people. Will that happen in Ghana? Let's start there. Do you see the people in power, the executive, listen to the people? Do you see the electorate listen to the youth and act for what they want?
I do think, I mean, those are very, very good examples. I do think that the government has been responsive in this country. There have been times when, like I said, there are certain policies or certain programs that were pulled back or that they reneged on as a result of the groundswell or the massive public attention that these policies had courted, and the fact that many people were talking about these on social media. I do think that the government has felt it, that they have responded to it, and there are times that the government has had to make statements, issue statements, and make public declarations as far as some of these issues are concerned. We've had the president respond to the demonstrations. We've had the vice president also talk about the youth. Actually, as we speak, the vice president is billed to meet with the youth of this country today, Sunday, this afternoon. He's meeting a cross-section of young people in the country, and I'm sure that a lot of the issues that we are talking about would come front and center in this campaign. But I do have to say that a lot of credit has to go to the social activists, the youth social activists, who have made sure that the youth have not been at the backbench as far as this election is concerned. I will say, and I covered actually what some of these demonstrations. I reported on them, and I've written about the power of the digital tools to be able to hold government accountable and make governments responsive in a democracy. And we've seen this happen in Ghana. So I do think that the government has not turned a blind eye to these demonstrators or to the issues. As to whether they are satisfied with how the government has responded to it, I guess we would know during the election, or that is still out in the jury for us to decide. But in terms of participation and in terms of responsiveness, I do think that the wheels of democracy are very much in motion.
Wheels of democracy very much in motion, very, very clearly put there. And in fact, Ghana has always stood as a beacon of democracy when it comes to Africa, the continent of Africa. Now, that in itself is a frame that everybody has in their minds. Regarding the stepping in of the judiciary to actually reverse the decision of the parliament, however, doesn't that tarnish that image of Ghana as a beacon of democracy and stability?
Well, I don't think it does. I actually think it does the opposite. I think that it rather enhances and further establishes the nation as a democracy of institutions. And this is what I mean. So there was a parliamentary standoff. The Speaker of Parliament declared certain seats vacant because these members were going to stand again for elections, but this time on a ticket of a different party from what they were currently holding. And so he declared them vacant because of certain provisions. Well, they were not happy with it. And so, because that would have made the opposition party the majority, and obviously they weren't going to go for that. So they went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court gave his declaration, but the Speaker of Parliament was not happy about it, and he countersued, went to the Supreme Court. And it was proceedings were telecast live on television for everybody to see. It was a national broadcast. It was nothing hidden behind cameras for journalists to go and report and for people to hear. He said, she said, nope. This was nationally broadcast, and their verdict was given with reasons. I think that it enhances democracy in Africa because it is not about machetes or violence or settling scores through physical force, but through the power of democratic institutions such as the courts. I mean, it's such a beauty to observe because I think this is a novelty. Just 2 months to an election and parliamentary seats are being declared vacant, and the majority in parliament switches from the ruling party to the opposition, and the way in which they solve this is not by going into parliament to throw chairs at each other, not by going into parliament to engage in fisticuffs, and not by party supporters meeting on the premises of parliament, exchanging blows, fighting and firing guns at each other. But they decide to go to the courts, to use those very institutions that democracy has established to settle this. I do think that I don't see that as an undermining democracy. I think that it shows the maturity or the growth of democracy in Africa, that yes, institutions can work, that a strong man, the days of the strong man are over, where the president can act willy-nilly, and that the Supreme Court becomes the final arbiter in the adjudication of justice in any proper democracy.
Eche, I wanted to say regarding your reference of chairs being thrown and blows being thrown,
We got it.
I feel attacked as a Nigerian.
We got it. Thank you.
But thank you very much. Very subtle, but we caught it. Thank you very much.
Eche, I have to ask, right?
To be fair, I didn't have Nigeria in mind.
It's okay. It's okay.
You
You're
don't even have
protesting
to.
too much.
We're-
It's okay.
it's
Don't
guilty.
worry.
You don't have.
We accept
You don't have to. We're seeing cases like that in Nigeria, so
It's
it's
okay.
we feel
We have children in court.
we feel a type of way, you know.
It's okay.
Yeah, and of course we don't take any offense from
No,
what you
no,
said.
none.
We're just it's our reality, it's
You
our
paint a
lived
perfect
reality
picture.
that we have currently. And so, which takes me to my next question, Eche, right? About what this ruling would mean for the upcoming elections and even for the political narrative of Ghana after the election. There's a lot on the bill. What would it mean for the election come December 7th and afterwards?
I think it would have quite significant implications because you see, the stakes are very, very, very high as far as these elections are concerned. We have a majority party which believes that for the first time they can break that incumbency curse of a different party coming in after an 8-year rule. We have the sitting vice president running on the ticket of the incumbent party, and he's running on digitalization and running on upgrading Ghana, taking Ghana to the next level through the power of technology by bringing about a fourth industrial revolution into the country. And this has been a very different vice president. He has really revolutionized and changed the nature of the institution of the vice presidency in this country by transforming it into a tool for social activism, a tool for social good, and by using his position to advocate for very important issues such as digitalization, mainstreaming it, and using it as a superhighway to the fourth industrial revolution in Ghana. And I did write a book about that in terms of how he had really transformed the vice presidency. This was where the US was when Jimmy Carter was president and Walter Mondale became the vice president, and he told himself he was going to be a very different kind of vice president and transform it to a position of impact. And every vice president after the US kind of followed that template and paid credence to Mondale for what it did. That is the kind of vice president that we have in Ghana. And so he has stamped his image and his stature on the national psyche in terms of transforming that institution. So there is real palpable optimism on the side of the incumbent party that for the first time the 8-year jinx is going to be broken, and that he would hopefully continue in the next 4 years. And then we have an opposition party which had a one term in the person of President John Mahama, and he went off and he's coming again to see if he can have another term. This has also never happened. A president having one term, losing it, another party coming, and then this one term president running again to make sure that he really comes to finish off what he had started. And
Right.
so John Mahama has his political legacy at stake. He wants to make sure that he comes back to finish off and to establish his own political legacy in the country. This is an election he does not want to lose.
Right.
So the stakes are very, very, very significant in these elections. And the parliamentary issue, what happens is that they want to use it as a show of force, that who has the momentum, and that is why there's that struggle going on.
We're pressed for time. I'm pretty much out of time, but humor me for a second. I'm sorry, but I have to ask about, the Ghana's economy. We understand that it's recovering from a severe financial crisis currently at the moment, and that's one of the huge issues
Factors
on the bill for this elections. And I have to ask, which of the candidates have a stronger policy to address the economic issues in Ghana? Very quickly, because we're pressed for time, please.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you really want me to go ahead with this, but we have two candidates. One of them is an economist. That's the incumbent vice president. And we do have the candidate of the opposition party who has said that he is coming to reset the country. So these are two candidates with very, very different visions for the country. I would say that, yes, the economy has had some challenges, but like you rightly said, it is finding its footing back on the pedestal. And so the question is, will the people of Ghana trust that this recovery should continue in the hands of the incumbent party, or they truly do want a reset? And I guess we don't have to hold our breath. In a couple of days or in a couple of weeks, not too long, we will definitely find out.
Oh, we'll find out indeed.
Thank you very much for adding one more person to the list of fantastic guests we've had on today's show.
Thank you.
Thank you indeed.
Yeah, thank you. It was really interesting and awesome talking to both of you.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it.
Likewise, ourselves. CK, so brother, I'll take that again. Iche Sikanku is a political communication analyst and also an academician, and he joined us today to just give us a bit of impact, conversation, insight on Ghana's elections, as well as youth participation heading to the elections, the Ghana general elections come December 7th, I beg your pardon.